Plea crossed Lightyears and woke the quiet hammers of Earth. Lieutenant Commander Mary Okamoto was 3 hours into her night shift at the Deep Space Monitoring Station when the universe changed forever. The orbital facility, positioned at the edge of Earth's solar system, had been quiet for months. Mary preferred it that way. Quiet meant no asteroid threats, no solar storms, and no mysterious signals that would require her to wake up the senior staff at 0300 hours. She was reviewing routine telemetry data when the long-range receiver array suddenly lit up like a Christmas tree. Every screen in the control room flashed urgent yellow, then deep red. Mary's coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering on the metal floor. "Control, this is Lieutenant Patel in communications," came a voice over the intercom. "We're receiving a transmission on multiple frequencies. It's not from our solar system." Mary's heart hammered against her ribs. After decades of searching, humanity's first contact wasn't coming through official channels or diplomatic protocols. It was happening on her watch, in the middle of a quiet Tuesday night. "Route it to the main display," Mary ordered, her voice steadier than she felt. The massive screen filled with static, then slowly resolved into an audio waveform. The universal translator, installed just 2 years ago on the slim chance they might need it, kicked in with a soft chime. What came through the speakers made Mary's blood run cold. It was weeping. Someone was crying while they spoke, their voice breaking with desperation and exhaustion. The translation rendered it in clear English, but the raw emotion needed no interpretation. Anyone who can hear this broadcast, we need help. My name is Diplomat Kever of the Thylorian Commonwealth. Our worlds are dying. They're killing everyone. Mary grabbed her emergency communicator and patched directly into Admiral Victoria Shingo's private line. The Admiral answered on the second ring, her voice alert despite the early hour. "Admiral Shingo here. Ma'am, this is Lieutenant Commander Okamoto at Deep Space Station 7. We have a situation. We're receiving a distress signal from outside our solar system." There was a pause that seemed to stretch for hours. "You're certain about this, Mary?" "Yes, ma'am. We're recording everything. The signal originated approximately 37 light years away." "Ma'am, they're asking for help. Send me everything immediately. And Mary, tell no one else about this until further notice." The transmission continued, painting a picture that made Mary's stomach churn. The Thylorians described themselves as a peaceful confederation of worlds dedicated to art, science, and philosophy. They had no military, no weapons beyond basic security forces. Their greatest achievement was a network of research stations that studied cosmic phenomena and shared knowledge freely with any species that asked. Then, the Scarith hegemony had found them. They came with ships like moving cities. Kever's voice continued, now barely above a whisper. "We tried to welcome them, to share what we knew about the universe. They responded by bombing our research stations. They're taking our people as slaves, stripping our worlds of resources. We tried to evacuate, but their ships hunt down our civilian transports like predators stalking prey." Mary closed her eyes, listening to the desperate plea that had traveled 37 years through the void to reach them. "We don't ask for much. We know we're strangers to you. Perhaps you could send medical ships or evacuation transports. We'll share everything we've learned about science, about the galaxy, about technologies that might benefit you. We just want our children to live." The voice broke completely now. "Our colonies are burning. Our people are dying. The Scariths say they'll finish cleansing our space within 5 days. Please, if anyone receives this message, we're running out of time." The transmission ended, leaving Mary alone with the silence of space and the weight of an impossible decision that wasn't hers to make. Dr. Ravi Nakamura had spent his entire career studying xenobiology through theoretical models and computer simulations. Now he stood in his secure briefing room at Earth Defense Command, staring at real photographs of real aliens for the first time in human history. "The Thylorians," he explained to the assembled officers, "are remarkable in their fragility. Look at these bone density scans we extrapolated from their body structure. They evolved on a world with lower gravity and virtually no predator species. Their entire physiology is built for efficiency, not survival." Admiral Shingo studied the images on her tablet. The Thylorians were tall and graceful, with elongated limbs and large, intelligent eyes. Their skin had a translucent quality, showing delicate circulatory systems underneath. Everything about them spoke of a species that had never needed to fight for survival. "What about the Scareth?" asked General Harrison Brooks. Dr. Nakamura pulled up a new set of images, and the mood in the room darkened. The Scareth were built like living weapons. Thick, armored hides, powerful limbs designed for crushing, eyes set deep in skull ridges that suggested evolution in a world of constant violence. "They're apex predators," Nakamura continued. "Everything about their biology suggests they come from a world where only the strongest survived. Their ships are extensions of that philosophy, overwhelming force applied without mercy." "Numbers?" Admiral Shingo asked. "Intelligence estimates put the Scareth fleet at approximately 800 vessels of various sizes. They appear to have been expanding through this region of space for several decades, conquering less advanced species." Captain Derek Walsh, who commanded the stealth reconnaissance ship UES Shadow, had been quietly studying the tactical data. "Ma'am, request permission to take a small force to observe the situation firsthand." "Granted, take 2 ships, maintain stealth, report back within 72 hours. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with." As the briefing concluded, Admiral Shingo remained behind with General Brooks. They both understood what nobody wanted to say out loud. Humanity was about to make a decision that would define their place in the galaxy forever. "How do we respond to this?" Brooks asked quietly. Shingo looked out at the stars through the briefing room's reinforced window. "We respond the way humans always do when someone asks us for help. We help them. Even if it means war with a species we've never encountered." "Harrison, did you listen to that transmission? They're hunting down evacuation ships. They're enslaving an entire species whose greatest crime was being peaceful." Shingo's voice hardened. "The Scareth picked the wrong galaxy to be monsters in..." The USS Shadow dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Thylorian system 72 hours later. Captain Walsh and his crew of 12 immediately began passive scans, staying hidden behind the system's outermost planet. What they saw made seasoned military personnel struggle to maintain their composure. "Jesus Christ," whispered Lieutenant Sofia Rodriguez, the ship's sensor operator. "Captain, you need to see this." The main display showed Thylorian civilian ships attempting to flee their homeworld, only to be systematically hunted down by Scareth attack craft. The alien predators weren't just destroying the ships, they were toying with them, herding them like cattle before moving in for the kill. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Lance Kim, "I'm intercepting Scareth communications, running them through the translator now." The bridge speakers filled with harsh, guttural voices that the computer rendered into cold, clinical English. "Herdmaster Krex to pack leaders. Civilian transport at bearing 27 Mark IV shows life signs of approximately 300 prey creatures. Wound it first, let the terror build, then feed." Another voice responded with what could only be described as laughter. "Acknowledged, Herdmaster. The soft skins break so easily. This hunt lacks challenge." Captain Walsh felt his hands clench into fists. These weren't soldiers fighting a war, they were predators enjoying a slaughter. "Captain," Lieutenant Rodriguez said quietly, "one of those transports. The children's evacuation ship from the primary colony. It's trying to reach the outer system." Walsh watched as 3 Scareth fighters moved to intercept the fleeing transport. The Thylorian ship was clearly marked with symbols that even humans could recognize as indicating non-combatants aboard. "Sir," Kim reported, "the Scareth are discussing taking prisoners from that ship. They want the young ones alive for their slave markets." Something snapped inside Derek Walsh. He'd spent 15 years in military service, following orders and maintaining discipline even in impossible situations. But watching aliens hunt children while discussing the slave trade broke every rule of civilized warfare he'd ever believed in. "All hands, battle stations," Walsh ordered. "Tactical, lock weapons on those fighters. We're going loud." "Sir," his executive officer warned, "we have orders to observe only." "New orders," Walsh replied grimly. "We observe the Scareth learning what happens when they threaten children in human space." The U.S. Shadow materialized behind the Scareth fighters like an avenging ghost. Before the alien predators could react, 3 precisely aimed plasma bursts reduced them to expanding clouds of debris. The Thylorian transport continued its escape, unaware that salvation had come from a species they'd never heard of. "Message buoy deployed," reported the communications officer. "Earth Command will have our full report within 6 hours." "Good," Walsh said, settling back into his command chair. "Now let's see how many more of these hunting parties we can find." Admiral Shingo read Captain Walsh's report 3 times before calling an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. The video footage from the Thylorian system painted a picture of systematic genocide being conducted with casual cruelty. "They're not just conquering territory," she explained to the assembled leadership. "They're exterminating an entire species for sport. The Thylorians were right, the Scarith will finish their cleansing within days." "What are our options?" asked President Martinez over the secure communication link. Shingo activated the main display, showing a star map of the region. "We can send a diplomatic mission and hope the Scarith are interested in negotiation, though Captain Walsh's observations suggest they view communication as a sign of weakness." "And the military option?" "Operation Righteous Thunder. We deploy the 3rd Fleet 400 ships, including our newest carriers and battleships. We go in prepared for a full-scale engagement." The room fell silent. Humanity had never fought an interstellar war. Their ships had been designed for system defense and exploration, not galactic conquest. But they'd also been designed by a species that had spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare. "Casualties?" President Martinez asked. "Unknown. We're operating on incomplete intelligence about Scarith capabilities. But, Mr. President, I need to be clear about something. If we go in to win completely. Half measures will only result in human deaths and continued Thylorian suffering." General Brooks leaned forward. "You're talking about potentially destroying an entire alien fleet." "I'm talking about stopping a genocide," Shingo replied without hesitation. "The Scarith have made their choice. They've chosen to be predators. Now they get to learn what happens when they encounter a species that evolved from predators who learned to build starships." President Martinez was quiet for a long moment. "Admiral, you have authorization for Operation Righteous Thunder. Bring our people home safe and make sure the Thylorians have a home to return to." The 3rd Fleet assembled at the edge of Earth's solar system in less than 18 hours. 400 ships, ranging from nimble destroyers to massive carrier vessels that could deploy hundreds of fighters each. Aboard the fleet flagship, U.S. Defiance, Admiral Shingo addressed her commanders via hologram. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to engage in humanity's first interstellar war. We're fighting an enemy that views cruelty as entertainment and genocide as policy. They've chosen to hunt civilians, enslave children, and destroy a peaceful species that never threatened anyone." She paused, looking at the faces of officers who trained their entire careers for this moment without knowing it would come. "The Scarith expect us to be soft like the Thylorians. They expect us to negotiate, to compromise, to find some diplomatic solution to mass murder. They're about to discover that humans define help very differently than most species." Captain Lisa Hawkins, commanding the carrier UES Vengeance, raised her hand. "Rules of engagement, Admiral?" "Destroy any Scarith vessel that doesn't immediately surrender and withdraw from Thylorian space. Protect Thylorian civilians at all costs. And remember, we're not just fighting for the Thylorians. We're showing this galaxy who we are and what we stand for. Make it count." The fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying 400 ships full of humans who'd never met a Thylorian, but were willing to die to protect them. War Master Thek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bone Render, watching the final phase of the Thylorian extermination. His 800 ships had systematically destroyed every research station, every colony, every attempt at evacuation. Soon there would be nothing left but empty worlds ready for Scarith colonization. "War Master," reported his sensor operator, "we're detecting hyperspace signatures, multiple contacts emerging from jump." Thek's mandibles clicked with amusement. "More Thylorian ships! I thought we'd found them all." "Negative, War Master. The signatures don't match Thylorian technology. Configuration unknown." The main display showed space shimmering as ships emerged from hyperspace. Thek's amusement faded as the contacts multiplied. 10 ships, 50, 100, 200. "War Master, his communications officer announced. "We're being hailed by the unknown vessels." "Put it through." Admiral Shingo's image appeared on the screen, and Thek immediately dismissed the soft-looking mammal as another weak species like the Thylorians. "I am Admiral Victoria Shingo of the Earth Defense Fleet," she announced. "You are in violation of interstellar law by conducting genocide against a peaceful species. Withdraw from Thylorian space immediately, or face the consequences." Thek's laughter echoed through the bridge. Never heard of it. Another weak herbivore species come to beg for mercy? We are the Scarith hegemony. We take what we want, when we want it. Withdraw now, and we may allow your ships to flee. Shingo's expression didn't change. "War Master Thek, you have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal. This is your only warning." "Or what?" Thek snarled. "You'll fight us with your pathetic 400 ships? We have 800 vessels, each crewed by warriors who've conquered a dozen species. What could soft mammals possibly do to us?" "You're about to find out," Shingo replied, and the transmission ended. Thek turned to his tactical officer. "Crush them! Show these mammals what happens to species that interfere with Scarith hunts." The Battle of Thylorian Space began with the Scarith doing exactly what they'd done for decades, charging forward in overwhelming numbers, expecting to crush their enemies through sheer force and savagery. They had never fought humans before. Commander Alex Rivera led the first wave of human fighters off the carrier U.S. Retribution. Behind him flew 96 other pilots, each trained in combat tactics that assumed they'd be fighting for their lives against superior numbers. "Griffin Squadron, this is lead," Rivera announced over the comm. "Target their weapon systems first, engine second. These aren't soldiers, they're murderers. Show them what real warriors look like." The human fighters hit the Scarith formation like a swarm of mechanical hornets. The aliens had never seen anything move so fast or fight with such precision. Human pilots, trained in the chaos of atmospheric flight, treated the three-dimensional battle space of outer space like a natural extension of their skills. Rivera locked onto a Scarith cruiser and fired a spread of missiles at its weapon clusters. As the alien ship staggered under the impact, he was already rolling away from return fire and lining up his next target. "This is Griffin 7, reported Lieutenant Commander Jazz Okoye. "These guys telegraph their moves like beginners. Their ships are powerful but slow, and their pilots fight like they've never faced real opposition." Meanwhile, Captain Torres aboard the destroyer UES Relentless was demonstrating human tactical innovation. Instead of engaging the Scarith ships head-on, she was using micro-jumps to appear behind enemy vessels, deliver devastating strikes, and vanish before they could respond. "Target the command ship portside," Torres ordered her weapons officer. "Full spread, then jump to position Charlie 7. The Relentless materialized directly behind a Scarith battleship, unleashed every weapon it carried at point-blank range, then disappeared again before the alien ship's automated defenses could even register the attack. But it was the boarding actions that truly shocked the Scarith. For centuries, the aliens had used boarding parties as their primary tactic. Scarith warriors were physically powerful, with natural weapons that could tear through most species' defensive equipment. They expected their enemies to panic when faced with close combat. Sergeant Major Patricia Kim waited calmly as Scarith warriors cut through the hull of her ship, the destroyer UES Righteous. She and her Marines were wearing full combat armor that made them look like metallic giants, and they carried weapons designed to stop Earth's most dangerous predators. "Contact front," Kim announced as the first Scarith warrior charged through the breach. The alien was massive, with claws like sword blades and armor like hide that had protected it against every enemy it had ever faced. Kim's plasma rifle fired once. The Scarith warrior stopped mid-charge, looked down at the smoking hole in its chest, and collapsed. "Next," Kim said calmly. What followed was a masterclass in human military efficiency. The Scarith were physically powerful, but they'd never fought an enemy that combined their own tactical intelligence with superior technology and weapons. Human Marines moved through the boarding action like they were conducting a training exercise, methodically eliminating threats with minimal casualties. "Boarding party neutralized," Kim reported 15 minutes later. Hull breach sealed, ready for the next wave. The same scene was playing out across the human fleet. Scarif tactics that had worked against dozens of species proved utterly ineffective against humans who'd spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare. War Master Thek watched his fleet die with growing horror. His sensors showed Scarif ships exploding or going dead in space faster than he could count. The humans fought with a coordination and ruthlessness that made his supposedly savage warriors look like children. "Status report," he roared. "We've lost 300 ships," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. "The humans have lost 12 vessels. 12 ships out of 400. Thek's entire worldview crumbled as he realized what he was facing. These weren't soft herbivores like the Thylorians. These were predators who'd learned to think, plan, and fight with machine-like precision. "Signal retreat," Thek ordered, his voice barely a whisper. "War Master?" "Full retreat. All ships, withdraw to hyperspace immediately." But Admiral Shingo wasn't finished making her point. As the surviving Scarif ships tried to flee, human forces pursued them, methodically destroying any vessel that had participated in the slaughter of Thylorian civilians. Only 50 Scarif ships escaped, out of 800. The battle had lasted 6 hours. 2 days after the battle, Diplomat Kever stood on the bridge of the human flagship, still struggling to process what had happened. The Thylorian was small and delicate even by the standards of their species, made more fragile by weeks of stress and fear. "I don't understand," Kever said to Admiral Shingo. "We asked for medical ships, maybe a few evacuation transports. Instead, you brought a fleet that destroyed the most powerful military force in our region of space." Shingo looked at the small alien with something approaching paternal warmth. "Diplomat Kever, when humans decide to help someone, we don't do it halfway." "But so many died," Kever whispered. "Hundreds of thousands of Scarif in just a few hours. All those lives." "They were lives spent hunting children," Shingo replied gently but firmly. "They were lives spent turning genocide into entertainment. What did you expect us to do? Let them finish killing your people?" Dr. Nakamura, who'd been studying the rescued Thylorians, spoke up from across the bridge. "Diplomat, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about human nature. We appear peaceful to you because you've never seen us threatened or seen us watching someone else be threatened." Kever sat heavily in one of the human chairs, which had been adjusted for the Thylorian's smaller frame. "Your species seemed so reasonable in your response to our transmission. You offered aid and friendship. You seemed gentle." "We are gentle," Shingo said, "right up until someone starts hurting people we care about. Then we become something else entirely." News of the human victory spread across the galaxy faster than the speed of light. Every species with hyperspace communication networks heard the same impossible story. An unknown race of mammals had appeared from nowhere and completely annihilated the Scarif hegemony's main fleet. On the Galactic Council station orbiting the neutral world of Nexus Prime, emergency sessions had been running continuously for a week. Representative Zarn of the Carillion Confederation stood before the packed assembly, reading intelligence reports with growing amazement. "According to our observers," Zarn announced, "the humans deployed weapons technology at least 50 years ahead of current galactic standards. Their smallest destroyer proved capable of destroying our largest battleships through tactics alone." "How is this possible?" demanded Representative Quex of the military caste worlds. "Our intelligence indicated this species had only achieved interstellar travel within the last century." "Apparently, our intelligence was catastrophically wrong," Zarn replied. "The debris field around the former Thylorian system contains the remains of over 700 Scarif vessels. The humans lost fewer than 20 ships total." The council chamber erupted in frightened chatter. The Scarif had been considered the primary military threat in their region of space for over 3 centuries. If humans could destroy them so easily, what did that mean for everyone else? "We need to establish diplomatic contact immediately," declared Representative Vex of the Peaceful Worlds Alliance. "If these humans are as powerful as they appear, we must ensure they remain friendly to established galactic civilization." What remained of the Scarif government was in complete chaos. The 50 surviving ships had returned to their home system, carrying news that shattered everything the species believed about their place in the universe. War Master Tech, now stripped of his rank and awaiting judgment, gave his report to the Scarith High Command with shaking claws. "They fight like nothing we have ever encountered," he told the assembled leaders. "Their weapons are beyond our technology, their tactics are flawless, and their soldiers show no fear in close combat. We threw 800 ships at them and barely scratched their fleet." Supreme War Master Krell, eldest of the Scarith military leadership, listened in stunned silence. "You are telling me that a species we had never heard of completely destroyed our greatest fleet?" "Yes, Supreme War Master, and they did it to protect strangers. The humans had never met a Thylorian before, but they were willing to go to war to protect them from us." Krell closed his ancient eyes. The Scarith had built their empire on the belief that they were the galaxy's apex predators. Now they had learned that they weren't even close. "Send a message to these humans," Krell ordered. "Offer them anything they want: territory, resources, technology, tribute. Whatever it takes to avoid further conflict." "Supreme War Master," Thek asked quietly, "are we surrendering?" "No," Krell replied. "We're acknowledging reality. The Scarith hegemony surrenders to the humans, completely and unconditionally." Back on Earth, Lieutenant Commander Mary Okamoto was monitoring communications traffic that would have been unimaginable just weeks earlier. Her screen showed message after message from alien governments across the galaxy, all saying essentially the same thing: they wanted to talk. "Admiral Shingo," she reported over the secure comm channel, "we've received formal diplomatic contact requests from 234 different species or governments. Every major power in known space wants to establish relations with us." "Any common themes in the messages?" Shingo asked. "Yes, ma'am. They all want to make sure we know they're peaceful. The Scarith have offered to surrender their entire remaining territory to us 42 star systems and tribute payments for the next 500 years. Shingo was quiet for a moment. "Mary, what have we gotten ourselves into?" "We helped some people who asked nicely for our help, ma'am, just like we planned. And accidentally became the most feared military force in galactic history." "Yes, ma'am, that too." Admiral Shingo rubbed her temples, staring out at the stars from her office window. "Mary, get me a direct line to President Martinez. We need to figure out how to handle this. We came to space to be explorers and peacekeepers, not galactic overlords." But the galaxy had already made its decision. From now on, when civilizations faced threats they couldn't handle alone, they wouldn't call the Galactic Council or the Corellian Confederation or any of the traditional powers. They would call the humans. After all, when you needed someone protected, you called the species that could destroy entire fleets while barely taking casualties. You called the species that treated galactic warfare like a training exercise and genocide like a personal insult. 1 year later, human ships patrolled the major trade routes not as conquerors, but as guardians. Piracy had virtually disappeared. Few criminals were willing to risk encountering the species that had destroyed the Scarith hegemony in 6 hours. The Thylorians had settled on 3 beautiful worlds that the humans had helped them find. Places with gentle climates and no dangerous predators. Their new colonies were thriving, protected by the knowledge that attacking them would bring swift and terrible retribution. Diplomat Kiever often stood in the gardens of New Thylorian Prime, looking up at the stars and thinking about the message that had changed everything. They'd asked for a few medical ships and some engineers to help them escape. Instead, they'd woken something that the galaxy had never seen before. A species of peaceful explorers who became absolutely merciless when someone threatened innocence under their protection. The universe was a much safer place now, even if some of its inhabitants still had nightmares about how that safety had been achieved. And in the deep reaches of space, species that had been planning conquests and expansions quietly reconsidered their options. Because everyone now knew the most important rule of the new galactic order. When humans decided to help someone, they didn't do it halfway. The quiet hammers of Earth had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same.